My husband told me to be more independent again, right when he was paying for someone else's life from our joint account, except I did not know that yet. It was a Tuesday morning, and I asked him for a new laptop for work. Mine had started freezing every time I opened 3 tabs at once. Gavin looked up from his coffee and said I should learn not to lean on other people for everything. He straightened his shirt cuffs while he said it, the way he always did when he believed he had already won an argument. I did not argue back. I just wrote the request down for later, the way I wrote down most things I could not say out loud. A few days later, I brought up the household budget again. I wanted us to sit down and go through it together, the way normal couples did. Gavin answered me in front of 2 of our friends, loud enough for the whole room to hear him. He said if I wanted more money, I should become more independent. Everyone laughed a little, the nervous kind of laugh people give when they are not sure what just happened, but know they should smile anyway. I reached for my wrist and adjusted my silver bracelet, an old thing my grandmother gave me, worn thin at the clasp from years of wear. I did that a lot, whenever I needed to stay calm. On our anniversary, he bought himself a new watch, something sleek and expensive, and told me over dinner that I should think about budgeting better if I wanted nice things too. I looked down at the plain silver bracelet on my wrist and said nothing. The waiter refilled our glasses and Gavin thanked him warmly, the same warmth he never seemed to have left over for me. Be more independent. That phrase followed our marriage like a second shadow. He said it when I asked for anything, when I wanted anything, when I simply existed with a need. It sounded almost reasonable every time, which was the worst part. Nobody around us ever seemed to notice how strange it was that a man would demand independence from his own wife while controlling every account in the house. After each of these conversations, I noticed something small. Gavin would take out his phone, open the banking app, look at the screen for a few seconds, and lock it again immediately. I used to think it was just a habit, a man checking his balance the way men do. I did not think about it twice. Not yet. One morning, Gavin was in a hurry for a video call. He set his tablet down on the kitchen counter right after confirming a bank transfer through 2-factor authentication, then rushed out the door with his coat half buttoned. I picked up the tablet only to silence a notification buzzing across the screen. The transfer history was still open underneath it, the app not yet locked. I saw a monthly rent payment. I saw a car payment. I saw a health insurance premium. I saw a string of expensive purchases going back months, restaurants, a spa, a jewelry store I recognized from downtown. Every one of them was made out to a name I did not recognize at first, Celia Mercer. The total came to almost half of what we lived on every month. For a moment I told myself there had to be an explanation, a shared business account, a family member I had never met. Then I scrolled further back and saw the same name attached to the same categories of payments, month after month, going back nearly 3 years. There was no explanation that made this innocent. I did not scream. I did not cry. Everything I had suspected without knowing I suspected it clicked into place at once, quiet and complete, like a lock turning. The screen stayed open because Gavin had left the tablet unlocked in his rush to get to that meeting, so the whole history sat there in front of me, dated and time-stamped, more honest than he had ever been with me. The first thing I actually noticed was the date. Every single transfer landed on the exact same day of the month, month after month, for what looked like years. It was the same day my own paycheck usually arrived. My hands stayed steady while I scrolled, though my chest felt tight in a way I had not expected. I took a photo of the screen before I set the tablet back down exactly where he had left it, angled the same way, so nothing would ever look disturbed. I did not say anything to Gavin that night. I made dinner, I answered his questions about my day, and I watched him straighten his cuffs at the table while he complained about a coworker, as if nothing in our lives had changed at all. Inside, everything had already changed. Instead of confronting him, I called Harper Sloan the next morning and asked for an emergency meeting. Harper had helped colleagues of mine set up retirement accounts before, and I trusted her more than anyone with money matters. I sat across from her in a small conference room downtown, the folder of screenshots I had taken sitting between us on the table. She listened while I described the payments, the name, the years it must have gone on. She asked me for numbers, exact numbers, and I gave her what I remembered from the tablet as closely as I could. When she reached the most important part of what she wanted to say, she closed her laptop first, the way she always did whenever the next sentence mattered more than the rest of the meeting. "Before you leave him," she said, "make sure he cannot chase you down financially. Get your own accounts moving before he ever suspects you know anything." She walked me through what that meant in practice. A separate income stream he did not control. A place to live that his name was not attached to. Enough saved that I would never have to ask him for a single dollar again, not for rent, not for a lawyer, not for anything. Harper wrote 3 steps on a legal pad and slid it across the table, since she never let a sensitive plan exist only in a shared document Gavin might one day glimpse. Step 1 was income he did not touch. Step 2 was housing his name would never be attached to. Step 3 was legal representation lined up before I said a single word to him about any of it. I folded the page and put it in my bag, the same bag I carried to work every day without him ever thinking to look inside it. We met again 2 weeks later so she could walk me through the numbers. If I saved even a modest amount from every paycheck, I would have enough within 4 months to cover a security deposit, moving costs, and 2 months of rent on my own. Once my new salary started, that window would shrink even further. She circled a date on her calendar and told me that was the day everything could move at once. Over the following weeks, I built a version of my life that Gavin knew nothing about. I opened a separate checking account entirely online, no paperwork mailed to our house, no statement he could ever find in the stack of mail on the counter. I started a new savings account beside it and moved a small amount from every paycheck, careful never to shift enough that our joint balance would look different to him. I checked the joint account every few days just to make sure the numbers still matched what he expected to see. At work, an opportunity came that I had not expected. Darren Holt, the head of our division, called me into his office one afternoon. He took off his glasses before he spoke, wiped them slowly with a napkin from his desk, the way he always did before anything serious. He told me the company was opening a new leadership role and that my name had come up more than once in the discussion. Darren told me the number before I even asked, since he said negotiating in the dark rarely helped either side. The offer came to nearly double my current salary. A signing structure let the first payment land before my official start date. On top of that, a relocation allowance was available if I wanted to move closer to the new office. I asked 2 more questions about how the relocation program worked, and he answered both without hesitation, the same steady patience he brought to every serious conversation in that office. I told him I needed a day to think it over, though I already knew my answer before I left his office. I signed the contract 2 days later. Gavin still did not know any of it. My new salary would not begin until the position officially started, which gave me a window where money moved without his notice. My new company also ran a relocation program that arranged housing directly through a corporate account, so any paperwork about a new address would only ever reach my work email, never our home mailbox. On my lunch breaks, I started looking at apartments quietly, one listing at a time, careful to close the tab whenever anyone walked past my desk. I looked at a small unit with a window seat and good light, imagined a version of my life sitting there with nobody watching to see whether I bought myself something small for once. I saved 3 listings and planned to send them to a lawyer as soon as I found the right one. One evening, Gavin picked up my phone to check the weather, and a message flashed briefly at the top of the screen from a firm name he did not recognize. I told him it was a recruiter reaching out about work, which was close enough to true that it did not feel like a full lie. After that, I saved the number under a name that would never draw his attention again. I hired Nina Brooks, a corporate lawyer who specialized in cases exactly like mine. Nina set colored bookmarks on every page of every document she prepared, one color for financial concealment, one for property division, one for anything that might come up in a hearing. She explained each page slowly, never rushing, until I understood every part of what I was about to do. She told me that the years of payments to Celia Mercer counted as dissipation of marital assets in our state, and that documented proof of a pattern would matter far more than anger ever could. She had me forward every screenshot I had taken to a secure folder her office maintained, organized by date, then cross-referenced against the bank statements her paralegal pulled through a formal records request. By the time she finished, the folder held nearly 200 individual transactions, each one traced back to the same recurring pattern I had first noticed on that tablet. We communicated only through a separate email address tied to her firm, one Gavin had no way of ever seeing. I saw Celia only once during those weeks, at a pharmacy near Gavin's office. I recognized her from a photo I had found while gathering evidence for Nina, a woman roughly my age, well-dressed, waiting at the counter. She touched a gold pendant at her throat while she waited, an anxious little motion, the kind that made me wonder for a moment what he had told her about any of it, whether she even knew there was a wife on the other side of his money. I said nothing. I paid for what I came in for and left. Judith called one afternoon and asked why I seemed so distant lately, whether Gavin and I were fighting again. I told her everything was fine. She said Gavin only wanted what was best for me, that he had always pushed people to grow because he cared about them. Her tone shifted partway through, less warm, and she asked outright whether I was planning something. I told her I did not know what she meant, and let the silence on the line do the rest of the talking for me. During that same stretch, I started moving small things out of the house without anyone noticing. A few pieces of jewelry from my grandmother, old photographs, documents with my name on them tucked into a bag I carried to work and never brought back. None of it would have looked unusual to Gavin even if he had seen it, since none of it belonged to him in the first place. Meanwhile, at home, something in me had already changed, even if Gavin could not name it yet. I stopped arguing with him. I stopped asking permission for small things. I stopped apologizing for existing in ways that used to make him comfortable. He noticed the silence more than he ever noticed my voice. He grew irritated in ways he could not explain to himself, snapping at small things, watching me across the kitchen like I was a puzzle missing a piece he used to be able to find. One night, he asked me directly if something was wrong. I told him I was just tired. He straightened his cuffs and let it go, the way he always let go of anything that did not fit the story he told about our marriage. Another evening, he came home and asked why I had stopped bringing up the budget. I told him I had finally taken his advice and decided to handle things myself. He smiled at that, satisfied, as if he had won something. He had no idea what he had actually given away by saying it. By the time my new position started, I had a separate account holding 3 months of new salary. I had a lease ready to sign the day I needed it. I had a lawyer holding a folder full of dated bank records, printed statements, and screenshots timestamped the morning I first saw them on that tablet. The night before the meeting, Nina called to walk me through what to expect. She told me not to argue, not to raise my voice, not to give Gavin anything to react against. She said the documents would do more work in that room than any words of mine ever could, and that the calmest person in the room usually looked the most believable by the end of it. I wrote her instructions down on the same legal pad Harper had given me months earlier, as if the whole plan had been building toward one single page all along. Nina told me the final piece would come together at the property meeting Gavin had already scheduled, the one about selling the vacation house we still co-owned with his mother. Gavin believed that meeting would end with me agreeing to his terms, tired and worn down enough to sign whatever he put in front of me. I let him believe that. He even mentioned it lightly at dinner the week before, said the meeting would finally settle things so we could both move forward. I told him I was looking forward to it too, and for once that was not a lie. The meeting took place in a conference room on the top floor of his family's investment office, arranged to finalize the sale of that vacation house. Gavin arrived confident, dressed the way he dressed for meetings he expected to win. Judith sat at the head of the table beside him, her teacup already set in front of her. Celia arrived a few minutes later, seated near the back beside Gavin's financial advisor, and a handful of cousins and family friends filled the remaining chairs. Nina Brooks sat across from all of them, her laptop already connected to the projector, presented simply as part of the official materials for the meeting. A printed agenda sat in front of every chair, listing the vacation house sale as the only item for the day. Gavin had clearly expected an easy afternoon, a room full of relatives ready to nod along the way they always did. Gavin opened by outlining the terms he expected me to accept, terms that gave him most of the house's value, while I walked away with almost nothing. He straightened his cuffs once while he spoke, certain, the way he always was in rooms full of people who agreed with him by default. Before we moved to terms, Nina said, "There is something everyone in this room should see first." She opened a folder marked with a blue bookmark and connected it to the projector. The screen filled with a spreadsheet of transfers, dates running back years, all sent from the account Gavin and I shared. Rent payments, car payments, insurance premiums, expensive purchases, one after another, month after month, all made out to Celia Mercer. The room went silent in the particular way a room goes silent when nobody knows whose fault it is yet to react. Judith reached for her teacup and set it down again, then adjusted it slightly on its saucer, then adjusted it once more, though she said nothing at all. Celia's hand rose to the gold pendant at her throat and stayed there, her face pale under the projector light. Gavin reached for his cuffs again, only this time his fingers moved too fast, and what used to look like confidence now looked like a man trying to hold something together with his hands. Gavin finally spoke, said this was not what it looked like, that he had been helping a friend through hard times, someone who needed support he did not expect me to understand. Nobody in the room asked him what kind of friend needed a car payment and a full year of rent covered, 3 years running. Celia turned toward him for the first time since the screen had come up. She asked him quietly whether their rent had ever actually come from savings, the way he always told her it did. Gavin did not answer her. He looked at the table instead, and that silence told her more than any answer could have. The financial advisor beside Celia looked at the numbers for a long moment, then quietly asked Nina to move to the next page. He did not ask for an explanation. The numbers had already explained everything they needed to. Nina walked the room through nearly 3 years of transfers without raising her voice once. These materials were now entered into record as part of the property discussion. Together they documented a pattern of undisclosed marital assets diverted to a third party. She noted the dates, the amounts, the consistency of it, one steady line running through years Gavin had spent telling me to manage on less. She added that a pattern this consistent typically counted as dissipation of marital assets under state law. Any court dividing our property would likely credit me for a share of every dollar that had left our account over those 3 years. Gavin's own financial advisor, sitting only a few chairs away from him, wrote something down on his notepad without looking up. Gavin tried to speak twice more. Both times, the numbers still on the screen behind him made whatever he was about to say sound smaller than it was. Whispers moved along the back row as 2 cousins leaned toward each other, and one of them quietly stood and left the room. Celia did not move at all, her hand still pressed against her pendant, staring at a version of her own life she had apparently never been shown either. Gavin turned to me once the screen finally went dark, trying to steady his voice into something calm. He said we could discuss this privately, that airing it in front of everyone was unnecessary and unkind. I told him privacy was the one thing he had used against me for 3 straight years, and I no longer owed him any. Judith did not defend her son this time. She sat very still, her cup finally settled at the exact center of its saucer, and said nothing at all. Nobody in that room needed her opinion anymore. The meeting ended without anyone finishing the conversation about the house. People filed out quietly, avoiding both of our eyes, the way people do when they suddenly understand more about a marriage than they wanted to. Gavin followed me into the hallway and asked, low enough that only I could hear him, how long I had known. I told him exactly as long as it took me to stop believing anything he said about money, and kept walking toward the elevator. In the days after, I did not hear from Gavin directly. Nina told me his lawyer had reached out instead, asking to negotiate the property terms quietly rather than let anything reach a courtroom, which she said was common once someone realized what a judge would see in black and white. I let her handle every message exactly the way she had planned it all along. I spent that week finishing my new apartment, hanging 2 photographs I had taken from our old house before I left, ordinary things Gavin never would have missed since he never once asked where they had gone. For the first time in years, I fell asleep without listening for the sound of his key in the door. A few days after that meeting, Gavin showed up at the door of my new apartment, the one arranged quietly by my company's relocation program weeks earlier. I had barely finished unpacking, boxes still stacked along one wall, but the place already felt more like mine than our old house ever had. He looked smaller somehow, standing in the hallway without a room full of people ready to agree with him. He said we could start over, that he did not want to lose our family. For the first time since I had known him, he asked me not to leave, instead of telling me what to do. I reached for my wrist and straightened my silver bracelet, the same one I had worn through every dinner where he humiliated me and called it advice. For years that motion had meant stay calm, say nothing, get through this. Standing in my own doorway, it meant something else entirely. Then I looked at him and said, "You spent years telling me to be more independent. I finally listened to you." I closed the door. He left an envelope on the floor outside, unsealed, with what looked like an apology written across the top page. I never opened it. I learned that independence was never about tolerating someone else's lies. It means having the ability to walk away once the truth stops leaving room for doubt. If this story kept you here until the end, hit like and subscribe for more. Do you think this ending was fair?